listening to The Starting Zone, a podcast about World of Warcraft and the people who play it. And now, here are your hosts.
Well, hello and welcome to The Starting Zone, the podcast about World of Warcraft, the people who play it. Today is April 26th, 2022. No, it's not April 26th, it's May 3rd, 2022. My name is Spencer Downey. Thank you so much for listening and subscribing to the podcast. I'm joined today, as always, by my co-host Jason Lucas. Jason, how are you doing this fine day in May? First show in May.
Spencer, hello. I'm doing well. It's actually we got. I'm really excited to play some WoW this week because we got some really good changes come in last night that we're certainly going to talk about today. So yeah, it's definitely springtime in my neck of the woods, and I'm happy about that, and been pretty busy and productive in WoW. So good times.
Good. Yeah, I actually this past week had a bit of a lighter week in WoW, which was nice. We sort of focused on our Anduin prog, and it was struggle, because we had Overwatch 2 launch last week, and one of our chief healers is also a major streamer for Overwatch 2, which meant we didn't have a Holy Paladin for Tuesday, Wednesday, which sucked. It meant that it sort of held us back a bit progress-wise, getting someone new in, getting them up to speed on the fight, also not having all the cooldowns and healing cooldowns that we sort of relied on, plus all the damage that he does as a Holy Paladin. So that was a bit of an experience. And then we got really close on Thursday night. We had a 13% wipe on that fight, which means we got into the last phase, and we actually got to see the first, hey, let's clear some people soak mechanic, and someone missed their soak, and that wiped the raid, and that was the end of that sort of prog for that night. So went back in last night, and last night we ended the night with a 0.97% wipe.
Oh wow!
That was the last pull of the night. Was a pink pull, if you will. The color coordination goes along with Warcraft logs. We had our second pull of the night was 11%. And then we had a whole bunch of phase 1 wipes, and then we had a 6% wipe. We had a whole bunch of phase 1 sort of wipe stuff, and then we had a 0.98% wipe is what it was. So it was a bit of a night. We had one of our hunters DC, which means we had to bring in a DPS who'd never really done the fight before with us for a chunk of the night. They had a little emergency happen, so they were out. And then we had some other latency issues, which on that fight you just can't have. In the phase where you have to interrupt the ads cast so quickly, like they do their cast in 0.5 seconds or 0.25 seconds, depending on where their haste buff is at. There's just no forgiveness. So you just go from basically if you have 170 MS or something, you can't hit your interrupt that you're supposed to hit, and then you just wipe. So it's a little crazy, a little frantic, but I think it just means it dies tonight. Like, that's such a low wipe that it just dies tonight. That's just how it's going to be. Right.
Yeah. It's just like a freak thing there. Yep. Right. Yep. I mean, I don't know. It sucks, but it's one of those nights you just got to chalk it up. Mm-hmm. You know, mm-hmm. It's like you got personnel issues, and these things happen. You know, real life does exist, and you get the kill in the bag. You just got to make it happen. But
exactly.
It's one thing to say that and think that and know that and internalize that, and it's another to experience it in the moment. You know, it can be really frustrating.
Yeah. Well, it was more disappointing. So I guess where most of us were at was it was disappointing. That was the last pull of the night, and it was disappointing. But anyways, I basically did that. I only did 1M plus last week. It was like I said, I had a lot of work stuff going on, a lot of real life stuff going on, so I did a lighter week. And it was funny because I was like, this is what's going to happen. I've been 9-boxing my vault up until this past week, right? Like every single box full, and I've been struggling to get the pieces I really need. I'm like, I'm going to do 1 Mythic Plus this week, and I guarantee the thing that comes out of it's going to be something I need. It was a 278 chest, which meant I could upgrade my chest piece from 272 to 278, and then catalyst it over to be in tier set. So I got something from my vault I could actually use, which was hilarious. That after 9-boxing for so many weeks, I just get it out of that single box. I knew it was going to happen. I just knew it was going to happen, and it happened. So yeah. That was that's my week in WoW outside of my usual farm stuff, which I actually went back to doing today, where I'm sort of maxing out all the covenants. So I sort of build up to 10,000 anima. Once I built up to 10,000 anima with Night Fae, I then swap over to another covenant, and the entire time I'm building up to that 10,000 anima, I'm also getting all of the give experience to followers items. That is my number one thing I'm farming on my mission table outside of anima and mats for crafting things that I can sell in the auction house. Today I was able to swap over to all my different covenants. There's a lot of tricks with this, guys. If you're someone who wants to like min-max out your covenant, there's a lot of things you can do right now with swapping around covenants. The biggest one of which is your anima conductors. You can use charges on your anima conductors. It's the charge bar at the bottom for reinforcing nodes on anima conductor is account wide. It's not account wide. It's character wide is what I meant to say. So covenant wide, if you will, which means that if I put 4 points in when I'm playing Necrolord, I will have 4 points contributed towards the total. I think it's 12 you need. And I'm able to then switch to Kyrian and put 4 points in Kyrian, and now I'm 8 towards the total 12 I need to reinforce something. I can switch over to Venthyr and put 4 more in, and then just go and reinforce a node somewhere. And you can do that every day, basically, until obviously it has diminishing returns, because once you've reinforced a node, you then can't get another charge off of doing that one node. But it's a great way to get your anima conductors all sort of maxed out. So I did that today. As part of that, I also used all of those experience items on my Venthyr covenant, which means that I got 2 more people maxed out at level 60, which feels really good because I basically built up like 10 or 15 of those 7,500 experience, 7,500 experience ones. Then there's the 10,000 experience ones, and there's the 3,000 experience ones, and you just sort of like dump all of that into one covenant and sort of boost them up in a big way, which feels really good. Then the 10,000 anima that I say I build up, I then spend on upgrades for the order halls there. So I started the upgrade on my Kyrian anima conductor to its final upgrade position. And then I'll switch over to Necrolord and start its upgrade to its final anima conductor position. I sorted all the transport networks first, so I have a portal in each of my covenants that takes me back to Oribos, which sort of helps facilitate some of this because I'm not spending so much time on flight paths, which feels really good.
Well, there's a lot of flying around without that.
Which is nice. And then once I got the transport networks, I was doing all the anima conductors. Once I get those, I'll probably do all of the like actual event-based things. I know I've maxed out Queen's Conservatory and the Masquerade for Venthyr, so it's about maxing out. I think I'm like 2 or 3 tiers into the Kyrian one, and I've done nothing with the Necrolord one, so I have to max those out. All of this, if you're wondering why I'm doing it, contributes towards an achievement for your account. There's going to be, I assume it's going to become a feat of strength at the end of the expansion for doing all of the events with all of the covenants. It's just easier for me to do it on one character than to do 3 or 4 characters at the same time. It would require a lot more game time to be able to do it versus sort of passively earning anima and then just moving that anima around with the bind on account item that exists inside of Oribos to all the different covenants to sort of manage them all. So like once a week, I do this kind of like maintenance thing that I do. So that was today. That's why I did my maintenance thing today. But yeah, that was sort of my week in WoW this past week. How about you?
Nice. Well, it was a bit of a frustrating week for me in terms of raid as well. Oh, first I wanted to say, last week we were talking about the dungeon event box and the fact that it gave heroic loot if you did 4 mythic dungeons, and we were curious if you could get loot from the final 3 bosses, the 272 item level loot, and a bunch of people hit us up on Twitter, Discord, emails, everywhere to say that they pulled 272s.
Yeah, which is awesome.
Thanks everybody who let us know. I got 272 loot myself, which was cool. I think maybe at some point I actually used them over the dungeon 272s I'm wearing once I even my haste out a little bit. But yeah, so that is a really nice reward, especially if you're doing like low mythic dungeons or something. So so that, for sure you can get the final 3 bosses worth of loot out of those weekly boxes. So that's awesome. In raid, I was only in for 2 nights of raid. I had something going on Wednesday night, so I missed a whole night. What I missed was night 1 of wiping on Heroic Rygalon all night. So it was our first week where we didn't kill a new boss of some variety since Sepulchre opened, which does not feel good. We had some good Rygalon attempts, and I don't think it was out of reach, but a lot of early mistakes, and that just creates kind of a domino effect as the fight goes on. Yeah. It's kind of an intricate dance on Heroic. Like you have to actually do it with proper timing. Well, maybe not as proper as you used to after today, but I think it's doable. I'm not. It wasn't my call to jump to Rygalon after we had some pulls on Lords of Dread, and I mean, just mathematically, Lords of Dread has been killed more than Rygalon, and therefore must be easier.
Yeah.
It just must be. Otherwise, it wouldn't have been killed more times. But there are certain voices that sometimes want to just like mix it up and go in a different direction. So that's what they wanted to do, and that's what we're doing. I mean, I think. With the nerfs and stuff, we probably can clean Rygalon up this week without too much trouble. We'll see. But raid a little bit frustrating. But the good thing was we got all the way back through Anduin being down on Tuesday. Like that's a really good Tuesday for us, I feel like. Mm-hmm. And we have one relatively new addition to the raid team who will be unlocking the skip this week. He had an Anduin kill from his other team prior to joining us before we got our first one. So he's a week ahead. So that means I think after this week, we're probably not going to fully re-clear until after Prague is done. We'll probably just start up a fresh instance and go straight to Anduin every week. The way with loot, the way it works and with the catalyst and everything this season, it just doesn't, when we need to get pulls in on difficult bosses, it seems like farming up a bunch of 265s is starting to lose value. So, I think it's going to be the plan after this week. I mean that's not terrible. I think the raid is structured in a way to really support that, so it should be good. On the dungeon side, it was a great tyrannical week, but unfortunately, I only had time to get in like 6 dungeons, and I did a bunch last night. I think I did 2 last night, like late night, that I didn't even think I was going to do, but I just happened to be around and other people were running. Did get my first plus 20 of the season in time.
Nice.
That was good. And it unlocked portals for a couple people that hadn't done it previously. So that was awesome.
They're so good, those portals, man.
Yeah, they're great to have. Like total game changer.
The fact that they reset, I just want to pause for a second for those who aren't sure about the portals or hadn't remembered this or whatever it is. But the portals, you use them to get to they basically teleport you to the front of the dungeon. Once you complete a 20 on the dungeon, you can teleport to the front of that dungeon. And that the teleport has an 8-hour cooldown, right? But if you run the dungeon and complete it, it resets the cooldown, which then means you can then use another teleport if you've earned it. So when you start unlocking multiples of these, you can run 2 or 3 keys back to back where everyone finishes the dungeon and then just teleports to the next dungeon. Even if only a couple people have it, they can then summon everyone immediately. And there's less of this 15, 20 minute downtime of getting people from one dungeon to the next, which feels really good. So it's a very cool aspect to the teleport. Is it's not just an 8-hour cooldown; it resets when you complete the dungeon, which is just cool.
Yeah, it's so great to have. It was totally worth the effort to get that done. For our core team, and even when we swap people in and out, you just you get the meeting stones, obviously. So, I feel like we're consistently doing higher keys now. I was really not paying too much attention to rating, just trying to do the highest key I had available, which was usually a 16 or a 17. Now we'll be doing 20s, 19s and whatnot for the most part. And I do want to crack 3K, but I'm not really, charging super hard for it. We'll get there when we get there. I mean, right. I picked up probably over 200 rating last week, or about 200 rating last week, without even really trying. I have a lot of really low ranking keys. So, it's just it's a matter of picking the right ones and stuff. And I'm picking up some gear here and there, which helps. Well, believe it or not, I've done the other side the most, and I'm probably going to do more of that this week as well. Mm-hmm. It's until those drops get off the table, that's sort of not my priority. But really great tyrannical week last week for sure. And then the other thing is I have been spending quite a bit of time on alts, during downtime or when it's not guild activity time. I got my 4-set bonus on the Paladin last week. So he's pretty much set up. I think I need to make him another 291, but I am free from having to do LFR in the Paladin. I ended up sending over a bunch of Soul Ash and Soul Cinders from the Warrior to the DK, and I made the DK double 291s. So she's pretty well set, and I should be able to get at least 1 or 2 more 4-set bonuses this week from Sandworn Relic gear. And that's just less LFR I have to do. I've been doing LFR in 2 characters a week, doing the third wing where it's all the 3 tier set bosses.
I am shocked that you've been doing LFR every week.
It's not
taken
pretty.
Aback, man.
It's really not pretty, and I don't want to do it. And the thing is, like the Sandwar Relic gear is just straight up better, right? Than most. It's as good or better than most of the set items that drop in LFR. So it's just you can only get so much of it a week. You can't really, you can't just sit there and grind it out until it's done. So taking a flyer on an LFR wing to hopefully get lucky. I mean, that's why the Paladin's done, because I had a chest item drop last week. So awesome.
I want to start advocating for that relic gear to be bind on account. Like I really want them to embrace
or the relics themselves.
Or the relics themselves. It's so expensive to buy. Like it takes so long to earn one piece of gear. I should be able to send it to an alt if I want to send it to an alt.
And on a character that doesn't want it. I mean, I'm sitting on almost 300 relics on my warrior again. It's like every time I hit 300, I just buy a piece and then I
have
vendor
like
it.
2,000 relics sitting in my bank because I'm waiting for them to put in a bind on account change. I just am. There's nothing for me to use them on, so I'm just waiting. I'm hoarding them for they're going to do this, and I'm going to just equip an entire character instantly. Like that's what's going to happen.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I hope they do, but I don't see it because it's so directly tied to character power that is relevant, right? If it was like 226s or something you were buying, then yeah. But I don't think they're going to do it. It's a little too far out of line with how they feel about like powering up your character in relevant content. But either way, like I've just been getting into a rhythm with making sure I'm getting a Samworn chest every day, and I should not be able to knock out at least one more 4-set this week, and then I'm kind of as those dominoes fall, then I'm just waiting for the patch to come in with the legendary crafting changes, and then I can get my rank 7 leather gear for my leather tanks, and then we're good. The only thing I've been doing is slowly chipping away at the Necrolord campaign. I've never done it before. My DK I went Necro on, and so I've been playing through that a little bit and really enjoying it. I think the questionnaire is really fun. It's also very simple and smooth and just easygoing in Zereth Mortis gear with double 291 legendaries and flying, doing the quest lines where it's like, oh, go over here and kill all of these mobs. Okay, I can do that. It's tuned for a character in like sub 200 item level gear. So, like once I finish that, then I got to do Venthyr on the DH. I went Venthyr on my DH, so I'll do that, and then that stuff will all be done. And then when the patch comes out and we have even more quality of life for switching covenants, then, the warrior, I'll probably switch around and just try to renown up with everything and just unlock stuff and whatever. But I don't have to do the campaign questing again to have certain things unlocked. So that'll be cool.
Yeah. Outside of that, I think we can dive into what's going on this week in World of Warcraft. How about you?
I indeed think we should do that.
All right, let's do it right now. All right, this week in World of Warcraft is the Burning Crusade Time Walking event, meaning that the Sign of the Twisting Nether is up, where Burning Crusade reputation gains from combat and quests are increased by 50%, and you get Time Walking access to Arcatraz, Black Morass, Magister's Terrace, Mana Tombs, Shattered Halls, and Slave Pens. All of these require character level 50 or above, and you can get yourself a cache of normal Sepulchre gear. I almost pulled it off entirely in one word without having to repeat myself. Anyways, Sepulchre gear. And we also have the Black Temple Time Walking version available too, the raid, where groups of 10 to 30 players can group up and head in and get some 252 eye level gear for max level characters off of bosses in there, as well as the unlockable Warglaze of Azzinoth transmog. So if you already have the Warglaze of Azzinoth and you kill Illidan inside of the Black Temple Time Walking, you unlock the ability to use the Warglaze of Azzinoth transmog on your weapons. So pretty cool little unlock there. I like the throwback to Black Temple. If you want to actually use that transmog, you need to actually do this to unlock the ability to do that. So yeah, overall, this is a pretty cool time walking event. A lot of these dungeons are they just hit so hard home. I just love them so much. So it's going to be fun to run through this on some alternate characters, get some easy level ups. Time walking's always been good for experience. Or if you're just trying to earn some of the badges, the time walking badges, to buy some really cool mounts and whatnot, this is another great way to do it. Be sure you get your 5 in for the week.
Yeah, I mean, these are great dungeons. This is a great era of the game, and these are fun runs. Like I feel like just overall the time walking tuning in this patch is really good. Like every time I do it, it just feels good regardless of which event it is. So yeah, I might have to get in there on a couple of the alts and see if I could scoop up some 252s. I mean, that's pretty nice item level for a character that's just doing Zereth Mortis and maybe a little bit of LFR. And there are all kinds of, with Legion just coming in back in December, there is a lot of new time walking, vendor specific cosmetic type stuff. So, don't forget that as well. If there's something you've been saving up for, like you can get a lot of badges just from doing the weekly. You get a fair bit as you're waiting for that next rotation for the vendor you want. But this is the only thing about time walking in this expansion is that like it's relatively pointless for gearing up even a fresh character. Like the gear that you get from drops and from the vendor is much worse than what you can get from Anima at the vendor in Zereth Mortis. So there's really no reason to even pay attention to the gear dropping from it, unless maybe you're looking for a particular Mog, but you could just do that on your own time without doing a time walking thing, right? So yeah, I find that weird about where time walking is positioned right now in the overall scheme of things. They clearly just didn't want it to be a source of gear of any kind in Shadowlands. I feel like they went a little too far. I think it could be a little bit juicier. It should at least drop 226s, I feel like, but it doesn't do that. So yeah, don't worry about that. Use it if you need to change a pace while you're leveling up, or just try to blast through if you're looking for that normal cash.
Yeah, it's worth doing if you're someone who just wants a normal cache on its own. It's still worth doing for sure. All right, while you're in Oribos picking up your Burning Crusade time walking quest, you can also head on over and pick up your dungeon quests for your current Shadowlands dungeons for Halls of Atonement and Necrotic Wake. Those will get you some extra reputation or anima if that's something you run this week and complete those. You can also head over to the PvP area and pick up your arenas and arena skirmishes quests if you're going to be doing either of those this week. And of course, a new deal quest that you'll want to pick up, which grants you one of the new PvP trinkets or a 3,000 honor reward. That 3,000 honor being pretty massive towards anything you want. It could just be normal upgrades for your gear. You could just be like buying PvP gear just to upgrade that gear up to 249. That's an option. You could also be using that to buy transmog, because you can buy the Marks of Honor with every 5,000 or 2,000 honor you spend. So this is just guaranteed 5 more Marks of Honor if that's something you want. And of course, once you've picked up these quests and you head into Zereth Mortis, that a new deal quest does count towards the patterns within patterns quest that you pick up within Zereth Mortis. It is worth 35% towards your weekly cap. And in order to do a new deal, you just need to be in war mode, in Zereth Mortis, killing mobs, looting chests, killing rares. All of those things drop these motes that you need to collect 150 of, which you get like 11 from opening chests. So you can get these done really fast just through doing stuff and activities inside of Zereth Mortis. And that means that you get 35% towards your patterns within patterns. You get another 20% for killing the world boss while you're over there. That's 55%. Just from opening the chest to complete a new deal, you're going to get like another 10 or 15%. And then, of course, your daily quest gives you that percentage towards patterns and patterns as well. You'll be done this quest in no time. I think it takes me all of 35 to 40 minutes to do this thing now, which is great. So it's just, you just got to do war mode till you finish the new deal quest. Turn in the new deal quest, turn off war mode. You don't have to do it again for the rest of the week. It's just a great way to complete the patterns within patterns quickly and easily. If that's something where you only have like a day to play or 2 days to play, you can get that quest done real quick that way. Which is
or you're trying to cycle an alt stable through, which is where I'm at, and it's sped it up so much for me. It's not like some of the other world PvP quests that are like, oh, kill 20 members of the opposing faction, because that could be a real pain and a time sink that defeats the purpose of trying to save yourself time completing the thing that you're trying to do. This isn't like that, and so I don't know. It's been huge for me the last few weeks that I've been doing it, because I do want to make sure that I'm getting that patterns cache on all of my alts that I'm actively playing, and being able to shave that much time off of the loop is just massive. So just if you haven't been doing it, you just got to do it. You'll be so happy that you did it, and then you can do something else with your time, even if that means doing it again on another character. But hey, that's probably, if that's on your list, then you'll be happy about it. So it's been it's a really I don't get like deep into like nitty gritty Zereth Mortis farming on the alts for the most part, right? Which is kind of a problem with Cosmic Flux and stuff. If you're not spending a lot of time out there, then trying to catch up with the creation catalyst and all that, you just run out of flux and you can't move it over at the moment. So patterns is I have to make sure I get that because it's really my only big, bump of Cosmic Flux for the entire week.
Yeah, it's certainly worthwhile getting those caches because you're right, it's a big bump of Cosmic Flux if that's something you need. I actually used my one of 3 catalyst charges I have. I'm still debating using the other 2 on something else this week to upgrade that chest piece I got from my vault. And I actually forgot it cost 1,500 Cosmic to do that. So yes, you will need Cosmic Flux to transfer items over, and if that's something you're looking at doing of creating your tier set, you're going to need at least 6,000 or 7,000 Cosmic Flux. So,
right. And then if you want double 291s, it's 2,200 a piece right there. So, yeah, I think I may get to the point where I need to actively farm Cosmic Flux on certain characters to get over the hump, but I'm not quite there yet. I'm just kind of spreading my attention around as I kind of grab all the low-hanging fruit.
Right, of course. All right, with that, Torghast might be another thing that you're looking at hopping into. We have Coldheart Interstitia and Upper Reaches as the 2 areas that are available inside Torghast this week, if that's something you're looking for. We then have Oranamonos, the Ever-Branching, the big Tyranid and Ardenweald is the world boss that's up in there, dropping your 500 anima, as well as some memories, Jason, which legendary memories if you're working on some alts or you're coming back to the game or people trying to get.
So for Oranamonos, you're looking at Fevered Incantation for mages, Surging Shots for hunters, and Verdant Infusion for druids. So even if you don't want those legendaries, you should get the memories because it makes your UI look nice and pretty when you open up that power panel. So if you got a mage, a hunter, or a druid and you don't know all your memories, make sure you do the old school world boss this week. And also, yeah, if you're buying the things that generate a random memory that you don't know, you don't want this one in the pool of that. This one's guaranteed. It's super easy to get. Get it while you can, and then if you need to, roll the dice on a memory from content you don't really want to do, you're not going to get one from a world boss. That's the worst outcome you could get from a random memory roll, I think.
Yeah. As far as the other world bosses go, of course, you have Morgeth, the Tormentor of the Damned in Desmateron, and Antros, that big Guardian construct in Zereth Mortis. Antros drops the 259 eye level gear, and a lot of them coincide with tier slots. So that's something to keep in mind when you're looking at picking up some gear off of Antros. But all these world bosses give you anima. And so if you're doing what I'm doing, which is, the anima farm for all of the different covenants, it's worth killing them every week just because it takes me a moment to do. I just find a random group, join into it, and you don't even need a full group to kill Oranamonos. You could do that with 8 people now. It's only got 4 million hit points or something like that.
Sorry, Oranamonos.
Yeah. So you can get in there and knock those out and get yourself a big hefty chunk of anima if that's something you're looking for. All right, Mythic plus wise, Fortified, Spiteful, Necrotic. This means that non-boss enemies have 20% more health and inflict 30% increased damage. Fiends rise from the corpses of non-boss enemies and pursue random players. And all enemies' melee attacks apply stacking blight that inflicts damage over time and reduces healing received. Wow. Okay, Fortified, Spiteful, Necrotic. This is one of the uglier trash weeks. The only positive thing about this week is bosses aren't tyrannical. That's the one thing I think people should focus on. Trash is going to take longer to get through. It's going to be up longer, which means the necrotic stacks go higher because the trash isn't dying as fast. You're going to have higher stacks of necrotic. You have Spiteful, where when trash does finally die, you're then locked in combat until you either let these Spiteful ads rot down to death by rooting them or knocking them back or stunning them, or you have to actually DPS them down to kill them, which means if you're trying to do something like woe skips, for example, you have to actually kill all these Spiteful ads before you enter stealth. You have to remember that. Don't just kill the pack and then run off to try and do whatever skip you're trying to do. These Spitefuls will hold you in combat and keep you from going stealth, so keep that in mind. And then, Necrotic in general, there are different abilities that remove necrotic stacks. If you have the Kyrian Potion as a tank, you can drink that and that'll remove your necrotic stacks. But in general, they're not that bad to drop. They reduced the duration on this debuff a while back, which means that people can essentially get away from mobs for 5 seconds, drop their stacks, get back into combat again, and not worry about having a ridiculously high, amount of stacks or having to do some very elaborate kite path. But you can still help out your tank with things like Ring of Peace and Roots and knockbacks and AoE stuns and that sort of thing, just to make sure tanks drop their stacks. Tanks in general, just pay attention to your stacks. Be aware, if you're doing the Ardenweald wing inside, DOS, you're going to get up pretty high on stacks very quickly with a lot of mobs hitting you. or even like the slimes before the first boss inside Plaguefall, you're going to get a lot of necrotic stacks very quickly in that situation. You just have to pay attention that you're letting those stacks drop when they get high enough. And healers, pay attention to how many stacks your tank has. Hold those damage reductions, your iron barks, your pain suppressions until the tank has a good chunk of stacks. Use your healing a little bit more forward heavy of trying to keep them topped off. And then once they get up above that 15, 20 stacks, start throwing those damage reductions so you get more value out of them later on in it. But in general, this is just a sloggy trash week. I'm glad they nerfed Necrotic. But, be ready for a slower paced dungeon where the bosses go quick, but the actual everything else in the dungeon is slow.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, I don't think this combo is that bad. I think, I could be wrong, but I think this is either a combo we didn't see in Season 2, or they have changed up the order because it was not the proscribed combo that we would have this week based on like the places that usually publicize that, like mythicpl.us and stuff like that, where I usually check. So, we know they changed some stuff up because they didn't want Sanguine Necro in the pool anymore. But we haven't seen the full Season 3 rotation. I don't believe it's been 12 weeks yet. So no, it can't be. So, we haven't seen the whole rotation yet either. So, this is a bit of a curveball from what we were expecting, but I actually think that this is okay. Necrotic has been nerfed so hard, and it is so easy to drop your stacks that you just have to pay a little bit of attention and make it happen. If you ignore it, you will die and you will be upset. That's what you did when you put the keystone in the pedestal.
Yep.
You said, I'm going to pay attention to Necrotic. It really shouldn't affect any other players. Spiteful Necrotic really isn't a combo, because if a Spiteful ad is gnawing on you, you are not going to care about your Necrotic stacks. You're just going to die.
Mm-hmm.
So there's really nothing there. And yes, there is boss interaction with Necrotic, but with the 5 seconds, and most of the bosses have really long animations and stuff, most of the time you're not going to find yourself in any kind of Necrotic trouble on a boss fight. So yeah, bosses are going to go down smooth this week for sure. It is a bit annoying because that means, by extension, okay, it's a fort week, so can we pull big? And the answer is sort of. It's tough because Necro is going to stack up. Like, yes, you do have to drop it, but it is going to throttle how much you could comfortably pull without like having to disrupt yourself every 5 seconds. So that, that's a concern. The other thing is, you mentioned woe skips, and that's annoying with the ghosts. And also just some of the dungeons are just really not as fun to do on Spiteful Week. I think specifically of Mists of Tyrniscythe, the maze. You cannot progress through the maze if ghosts are alive, and that can be a really annoying time sink. I mean, the timer in Mists is kind of tight anyway, and kind of maximizing what you can do in the maze is sort of important. So, if you're stuck there waiting for ghosts to despawn or whatever, like, you got to just kill them. You got to just jump on them and make them die. And the same thing sort of applies in Spires of Ascension. You have those angel taxis you have to take between the platforms. You cannot take them if you are in combat with ghosts. So, that done. I mean, first of all, I wouldn't really recommend doing Spires this week if you can avoid it anyway, because Fort Spires is just not a good time. It's not a good time with Necro. It's not a good time with Ghosts. I would probably, if you have a Spires, unless somebody's gunning for raiding or a particular item, like, probably do something else. But yeah, I don't know. It's a bit of a mixed bag. I mean, I feel like this week puts a fair bit of pressure on tanks, which I think is where it belongs in the dungeon, honestly. Spiteful is easy enough to deal with. It's just obnoxious. You have to pay attention to it. Like, obviously, if you have a melee heavy group and people are just kind of standing there punching away at red plates and not paying attention to what's going on around them, they're going to die from ghosts. But the problem with ghosts is really just the disruption that it causes and how much time you lose because people are shifting around or whatever. So, the good thing is you won't have those 3.5 minute long boss fights. So you can, I think it's still going to be an okay week if you're looking to grab rating from somewhere. It's doable, and I think with where the dungeon tuning has landed, where the affix has landed, where we're at right now in Season 3, I think if you're looking to go up to 15, like, pretty much any week is doable in any dungeon. I don't think any of it is like that overwhelmingly difficult where like you're actively playing against the game, sort of, what you kind of have to do as you get into the upper reaches. But around 15, I think all the way up to 15, I think it's pretty smooth. So you just gotta maybe pick your spots a little bit more this week, because some dungeons are going to feel worse than others for sure.
Yeah. All right. We also have a PvP brawl happening this week, which fortunately is now on a weekly rotation. I'm very glad they moved brawls up to that point. And speaking of one of the ones I like, it's Shadowpan Showdown. It's the one I was trying to remember the name of last week and nailed later on in the episode. You basically step into Tiger's Peak Arena and you all race to the middle. There's a control point, and when you activate that control point, these two bosses go in the middle and start fighting each other. And the goal is to keep whatever boss dies first is the team that loses. So you have to kill your other team's boss and make sure that all happens smoothly. It's cool. It's a neat, very Heroes of the Storm-esque kind of thing where you're activating these big robots that fight each other, and at the same time you have a bunch of people trying to CC each other, and it's a crazy arena. I like these PvE experiences they throw in with the PvP.
Yeah, cool spit. Like, I think this is the kind of thing that, I mean, we talked about it last week too. It more realizes like what a brawl can be versus something like, I don't know, Gravity Laps or something that's a little bit more vanilla. Yeah, right. Yeah. Like it's okay. It's a kind of a cool twist, but it doesn't really fundamentally change what you're doing.
Yeah.
Versus something like this, or even like Cooking Impossible or something like that, Deep Wind Dunk, where you have just a totally different game mode from what you're used to essentially. Yeah. So yeah, I think that's where the brawls really succeed, but it's also kind of cool that they have sort of the distinction, right? There's the more like straight ahead brawls that are just a familiar objective with some, a tweak to the rules, and then some that are just wackier. Since you have that weekly rotation now, I think it's fine to have them both. When we wouldn't see brawls for months on end, it was a little bit worse when it was like, well, there's a brawl this week finally, but it's Gravity Laps, Now it's like, okay, well, next week there will be something else that's might be more interesting.
Yeah, exactly. All right. After the brawl, we have Children's Week that's going on right now. It's happening through the May 10th. So if you're someone who wants to go to one of the major cities and pick up your orphan at the Orphan Matron, you can then escort your orphan around on crazy wild adventures, including PvP, awkwardly, to get achievements. I always thought it was weird to bring an orphan into a battleground, but that's something that you can do. And you can get all sorts of pets out of this. Like, don't forget, there's tons and tons and tons of rewards for this from all the different expansions. So there's like Northrend all-around ones. There's BFA ones. There's all sorts of ones. Jason, what are the BFA ones that you wanted to highlight? You do this every year, or we forget that these exist.
Well, in BFA, I think they added 4 new ones total: Mr. Krabs, Beakbert, Froglet, and Scaly. And this actually got a huge update in BFA. There's nothing new this year. Right. And I think the BFA quest chain in particular was really exceptionally good. Mm-hmm. And if you never did it, I would recommend checking it out. It's really fun. And the unique pets that you get from it are cool, even if you're not a huge pet collector. Like, I'm not a massive pet collector, but if you give me like a pretty decently fun quest line to repeat 4 times to get 4 cool unique pets, like, I'll do that. So, some of this stuff is relatively unchanged from many years ago, right? Like the Orgrimmar Stormwind stuff is not really, significantly different over the past decade or so. Shattrath stuff, etc. But the BFA stuff was really cool, and I think it flew a little bit under the radar. I think it came in like the second year of BFA essentially, and BFA kind of fell flat, and people were in and out of BFA a lot, so it might have gotten missed. So, if you never did that, head back to Borealis or Dazar'alor and find Orphan Matron Westerson or Caretaker Paday and do the quest line. And the only thing is, you can only pick 1 pet per character, but you can do the quest lines, for as many characters as you have. So you can get all of the rewards in 1 year if you have enough characters to cycle through all the different quest lines, which is cool. Like, if you're into pet collecting but just never got in on this, like, there's a lot of stuff you can grab.
So much.
And
oh my goodness.
Some of them have like pretty unique models. I don't want to say that they're like mostly unique, but they're not ones that like you see a lot of like recolors of or whatever.
There's only one Egbert, man. You got to go to Shattrath to get Egbert.
I don't think there's anything else that looks like Egbert, right? Like, not that I can think of. So Yeah, and the BFA pets I think were really cool. BFA had that like heavy nautical theme, and you had like the dinosaurs and stuff from Desarlor. Like that's So all that stuff is very thematic with that, and that was I think that really worked well. So I can't recommend it more highly if you want to play some WoW, but you really got nothing on the agenda. Check out the Children's Week stuff from BFA this week.
Yeah, the other thing I was remembering from when we were talking about the expansion reveal stuff last week was the Oracles. Was that I was trying to remember what the other faction was. There's Wolvars. It was the Oracles. It looks like the Oracles are back inside Dragonflight from some of the stuff that we were seeing, which was kind of neat too, to see those races popping back up again. And yes, you can go to Dalaran, the Northrend Dalaran, and work towards getting a Curious Oracle hatchling or a Curious Wolvar pup as pets from that period. So yeah, there's tons of them all throughout all the expansions. Definitely visit your major cities, Shattrath, Dalaran from Northrend, BFA, get all of the different quest lines, do all of the fancy stuff, and pick which pets you want to pick up, because BFA was only out for just over 2 years, and there's 4 pets, and we only saw it 2 to 3 times, so there's probably one you didn't have if you haven't gone back since that expansion ended. So certainly worth doing. All right, and then we also have Darkmoon Fair live. That's live until this coming Saturday, the 7th. So if you haven't popped down to Darkmoon Fair and gotten your experience buff or reputation buff or started earning tokens towards your dirigible or done the dance competition for all the new achievements, be sure you head down there and take advantage of Darkmoon Fair while you can.
Make sure you get your buff before you turn in patterns within patterns. Even if you don't do anything else, if you do nothing else at all, go get the XP and rep buff, and then go turn in patterns within patterns. It's a huge amount of extra rep. It's like getting an entire extra quest done for the week. So don't forget that. Even if you don't want to like min-max out your Darkmoon Fair rep, because there are some really good rep rewards throughout the Enlightened, entire rep system, and the Paragon bags are really juicy.
Jammed, man. Yeah, there's so much in there.
Don't leave that free rep on the table. Even if you don't want to be bouncing back and forth the whole time, you get the most bang for your buck just from having it up while you turn in patterns.
Yeah. And then, of course, we have some notes on the PTR, 9.2.5, little notes that came in here. The achievements coming in where all Sanctum features achievable are now visible and count towards your character's total achievement points, regardless of which covenant your character currently belongs to. Nonetheless, all characters must belong to a covenant to earn that covenant-specific achievements. So basically just saying, hey, we now have the points properly represent when you're part of a covenant, regardless of whether you've achieved things for other covenants. So good. This is like catching up with the ability to actually switch covenants around as freely as we were before. They're just sort of catching that up, so that's going to be happening for those people who've been worried about their achievement points.
Right.
Don't worry. It's
if you've ever worried about your achievement points,
there's people out there who do.
I mean, like, it's good that they're fixing this, but this is very low impact. I think it's just a weird quirk at the system right now, and that's fine. But if achievement points actually like meant anything in the grand scheme of things, I might feel differently about it. But it's just kind of there. But if you've been going around doing what you're doing, then you can rack up all those points on one character all the time.
Yeah, and speaking of going around doing what I'm doing, they're making that easier for those collectors out there. The reward boxes for callings now contain twice as many grateful offerings and still scale with your Covenant Sanctum's Anima Conductor level. So FYI, if you're someone who's doing what I'm doing, be sure you're maxing out that Anima Conductor for all the different covenants before we actually hit 9.2.5, because you're going to get twice as many of those grateful offerings, which you need to buy all that transmog for all those covenants. So be sure you're taking advantage of that. And then, of course, one of the best changes that they've thrown in as far as doing what I'm doing goes, Zareth Mortis weekly quest patterns within patterns now also awards grateful offerings. So, hey, if you just want to do the patterns within patterns quest every week, you now get, I assume it's going to be like a fistful of grateful offerings.
It should be a grip. Yeah, I hope so.
And that'll be another great way to get a bunch of offerings towards buying up all that transmog that people are trying to get. So super excited about those changes coming in 9.2.5, which is a little bit down the line.
This is a really underrated change, I think, because this is going to be, it's going to be one of the things to do in World of Warcraft for the next, 8-9 months, maybe longer, until we really start picking up some momentum towards the future. Like, a lot of your 9.2.5 and Season 4 activities are going to be doing stuff on your character beyond, your comfort zone, checking out the other covenants and collecting all this stuff. And Grateful Offerings are not super abundant in a realm where you're trying to collect them for 4 covenants, or 3 covenants, I guess, if you maxed out 1 by now, with a limited amount of time to do it, right? When this stuff all came out in November 2020, it was like, okay, well, I have this much. I'll be able to buy all this by then, and then I'll be done, and I'm probably not going to do anything else. And then, it just didn't play out like that. And now you have the opportunity to collect all kinds of stuff, except, Grateful Offerings changed a bit because they started putting them in the callings bags and stuff, but they haven't really. It's not like they quadrupled or tripled the amount of Grateful Offerings that you could easily get, right? Even with adding them to the bags, like, well, you get a few extra a day, but now maybe you want to save up offerings for 3 other covenants. So I think this was a good change. It's certainly something I'll be interested in taking advantage of once 925 is here and I'm switching covenants around on the main. Really, really cool. This is another thing. Give me a sync or some kind of way to change them between characters or covenants.
Yeah, I guess, that would be helpful as well. When I'm doing it all on one character, it's not nearly as impactful, I guess. But yeah, being able to move them around or have them account-wide would be super helpful. Yeah,
because I have some progress on an alt, right? Like, I think I have an alt who hasn't gone very far into, Kyrian, but he has some stuff unlocked, whereas my warrior has, nothing unlocked. So if I could just, send some Grateful Offerings over to another character so that they can buy stuff out from a vendor that they do have unlocked, then that'd be awesome. But I at least just cranking up the amount that drop and the sources they come from, that's a really good start.
Yeah, that would be a really good start. All right, next up we have player versus player on PTR. If you're someone who's been waiting for the Enigma arena to make a return, it has come back. It is now the Enigma Crucible. So if you're someone who is looking for doing some arenas in the Enigma Crucible, it's up on PTR. You can hop back in there and enjoy the unique mechanics that they have, where that center button allows players to manipulate pillars inside the arena. That created some issues and resulted in poor quality, which is why they had to pull it down for a while. And so they're continuing to work on that mechanic, and they're going to evaluate it for future release. Right now, that it's just a single pillar thing that's locked in position. You can't press the button and do anything. It's apparently was breaking things, so they stopped the pillar from moving. But you can still get in there and actually, see the arena and have fun in the arena if that's something you want to start doing over on PTR. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. We talked about this kind of a bit, I feel like, as they sort of announced that they were going to be working on it, and then it got bumped from 9.2, and, it sounded cool, but I am not surprised that it didn't really work out and that they're kind of rethinking it. I think this is probably the right call, is to just drop the arena and add it to the pool and have it be playable content. And if they figure out a way to make the sort of transforming landscape possible, make it work, make it feel good, make it feel relatively balanced or balanceable, then, maybe ship it later, maybe make it a brawl, something like that. At the outset, this always seemed too ambitious to me for an arena map, because I don't think this is really what arena players want. Yeah, it's tricky to judge. I thought it would be really cool. I sort of always picture this being like in the Gladiator movie, where they had the tiger pits and the tigers were running up from the pits and fighting people, right? Like, that's what I sort of picture as this interactable arena that's really, you can activate a button that then makes a monster appear and attacks the closest thing. So you sort of back their healer into a corner and then hit a button across the arena, and that releases this monster onto their healer. Would be like a really neat kind of concept. Or, take something right out of like Lahuvium's book, where it has the fixating robot that charges towards someone and then explodes and knocks everyone backwards. Have a smaller version of one of those with like a 10-yard circle or something, or a smaller circle that fixates on someone, charges at them, and then when it gets to them, puts down the circle and knocks back. You could use that as a escape tool if you wanted. You could use it as an offensive tool to knock people away or interrupt people. So being able to put something in the game that is unique like that, I think, is really cool. It's just, as you said, ambitious. Yeah. And is it worth delaying releasing this arena even further to sort of try and make a mechanic like that work, versus just sorting out that problem and doing something unique like that at a later date?
And I think just conceptually, is that arena then at that point, or is that a battleground essentially, or a brawl?
Right.
You
Yeah.
know, it's sort of outside the realm of what we've known as arena since like 2007.
Yeah.
You know?
Focusing on a lot more actual player character based skill, not on, situational awareness about the landscape that you're in kind of situation. There's a lot of positioning and movement based decision making that happens inside PvP, but it's all very much your character related to the other player's characters, not so much about the environment and how the environment could attack you. So yeah, that's certainly something I agree with you on as far as that goes. All right, as far as the live game goes, and hot fixes for that, they yet again have been going through all of the tier sets and classes and trying to do some balancing. The first of which actually is a change to a nerf that was happening with Blood Death Knights. We knew after this past weekend of MDI that Blood Death Knights were doing more damage than any other tank and were very, very, very strong, and they had to actually revisit what that class looked like. A lot of it was associated with one of their set bonuses, and it reducing the cooldown on a particular ability by a certain, I think it was half a second every time you used another ability to reduce the cooldown on your Runeblade weapon. And that meant that basically people were able to pump out a lot more damage than they should be able to. However, the change that they implemented was making that from 0.5 seconds to 0.25 seconds, which essentially halved the strength of that ability and made it so that it was required basically twice as many swings to get the same amount of reduction. There was a lot of feedback from the community about, from the Death Knight community about that, just making the class feel less fun. Not necessarily doing less damage, but actually the feeling of playing the class, just the rotation didn't feel as much fun to do. You want to be able to hit those buttons more frequently. It felt very rewarding to have it that way. So they actually reverted that change and went a different direction and reduced the 2-set bonus, which basically had a strength increase of 75% as part of the stacking cap that can happen. They've now reduced that to 40. So basically they went, all right, we understand that this feels good to play, so we'll leave that in. We'll just bring down the amount of strength you're gaining from one of your earlier set bonuses, the 2-set, and that way you are dealing less damage, but you still have the same sort of fun play style that you had before. So neat sort of viewpoint of them releasing a hotfix note, getting a lot of feedback, responding to feedback within the same week, within a couple of days responding to feedback, and then adjusting what that fix looked like to still have a similar outcome, but not be something that affects how well the class plays and feels to play. So pretty cool change. Very excited that they really sort of revamped and looked at that.
Yeah, I agree. We could have a discussion about just philosophically whether it's cool to have, nerfs of this magnitude or not. There's a part of me that goes, why don't you just bump up other classes so they're like on the level that Death Knight was at, last week? But that's not always necessarily even possible, because of the way some of these interactions work. I think it was clear that Death Knight was just a little too far ahead of the pack for comfort at the moment. And I do think the original intended change to have the cooldown reduction reduced on Dancing Rune Weapon, just that's a real feels bad. Yeah. Part of the thing that's cool about completing a set is having some new wrinkle to your gameplay. And the Blood DK set bonus is really fun and active. You get to use your buttons a lot more, use your big buttons. Like, that's always cool. Like, that's what makes the game interactive and fun to play. So I think just taking this more from a tuning angle and like, okay, the play style is still going to be the same. It's still going to be kind of the timings that and you can still use it the same way. Your strength is just not going to stack anywhere near as high. Like, obviously you're not going to do as much damage, and there are, some defensive benefits to having high strength. Ultimately, a Blood DK's job is not to like do obscene amounts of damage. That is not what they're in a group to do. It's fun when it happens, right? But it's not really like the conception of what the spec is supposed to be doing. But I don't know. It is kind of like a heavy. It is a decently heavy nerf to like how much strength you're stacking up. But hopefully it still feels okay. And I think Blood DK will be just fine. Like, they have so many tools, and the set bonus overall is so powerful. So I'm glad that they walked this back. I think the original, published intent for the change was the wrong way to go. Let us have the cooldown reduction. Let us have the uptime on the abilities. Let us push the buttons and then work the tuning out on the other end.
Yeah, I can speak from experience on this because it's basically the exact change they put in for Balanced Druids with the Venthyr Legendary. The Venthyr Legendary, basically every spell you cast during the main cooldown then extended the duration of what the Legendary did after your cooldown finished. And they took that away. They removed that entire benefit basically by nerfing it into the ground, where it's like, as opposed to it gave you extended it by 0.25 seconds or something. It extended it by 0.1 seconds was like what they chose to do, which just meant that you had to cast a ridiculous amount of spells to see even a second of benefit. It was just silly. And so that meant we went from basically having like a consistent 4 to 5 seconds of that secondary buff period to having 2 seconds of that secondary buff period. And it just feels really bad. So I sort of see this and I'm like, well, good for Blood DKs for getting that reverted. I would have preferred they did something similar with Boomkins, because it would have made Venthyr feel a lot more fun than it currently does. But yeah, I'm glad they were able to get that reverted, or at least changed as far as what that looked like.
That's a cool interaction. Like, yeah. I'm really glad the devs walked it back. Yeah. It's not in the hotfixes block for some reason, but there was a note in a blue post that they made about how they appreciated the feedback, and that was part of the reason why they diverted from the original plan. Like, how often do we hear that stuff from Team 2? Like, not enough over the past 18 years, but it seems to be an ongoing trend, so I'll take it.
The fact that they pivoted in a couple of days was fantastic to me of changing that up. Like, I saw immediate posts on Twitter from major player Blood DKs, saying this doesn't feel good to do as far as the class, like the play style, this won't feel good. And then almost immediately reversion like 2 days later of, we're going to do something different. We're not going to do that. And I was like, good for them. Way to pivot. I was very happy to see that. All right. They also did some buffs to some classes that are slightly less represented in DPS. We had Affliction Warlocks get a 4% damage increase, along with Arms Warriors, Outlaw Rogues, Windwalker Monks, and Beast Mastery Hunters. All got a static 4% damage buff applied to them. For Windwalker Monks and Beast Mastery Hunters, this does not apply to PvP, so it's an aura essentially that you gain that makes you do 4% more damage. That does not carry over into PvP. So that's how they sort of applied that buff. And then for Holy Priest, the Guardian Spirit will no longer fail to heal an ally who receives multiple fatal blows at the same time. This is a big buff to PvP for Holy Priests. This used to be something where essentially a Warlock double casting Chaos Bolts would just kill someone through Guardian Spirit. Now it won't. You'll actually get that heal happen, and then the second hit happens, and if the second hit's big enough, it'll still kill them, but at least Guardian Spirit will actually proc. It just won't fail to heal someone, and that'll be that, because multiple fatal blows hit at the same time. Overall, I just want to say, where's the Boomkin buff? They buffed every class around Boomkin. Literally, if you look at the damage profile for which specs are currently doing damage, it was like the bottom two, and then Boomkin, and then the three above them all got 4% damage increases. And it's like the Boomkin sandwich just got left out. Balanced Druids just literally got left out of that entire... It's very strange that they just haven't looked at balance at all. I feel to a certain degree they're punishing Balanced Druids for having Venthyr be a strong covenant in the previous raid tier. It's very strange to see them just be like, no, we just leave them in the corner by themselves while every other class is getting buffs. So I'm excited to see that they are raising the damage on all these classes. There is currently basically a 20% damage differential between the bottom DPS spec and the best DPS spec. A 20% spread in damage is insane. It's a massive spread. It's probably one of the worst damage balancing periods of time we've seen in World of Warcraft in a long time. They had this at 4% at one point. At one point, there was a 4% spread between the best and the worst spec. It is 20% right now. It's way out of control. So just, there's going to be more class changes, and they need to put in more class changes for a lot of these specs that are out there right now.
Yeah, I mean, hopefully they keep an eye on it. I feel like we've gotten a fair amount of changes, but maybe not as many as I would expect, considering, the data that we see week in and week out. They tend to nudge stuff because I guess what they really don't want to do is overshoot something. Like you could buff an underperforming spec 12 or 15%, right?
Yeah,
But then
yeah.
how if that's too much, then what do you do? Nerf them 2 weeks later? Like that doesn't
Right.
feel good for the players.
Right.
Like you turn the dial a little bit and see how it goes, and maybe turn it again. They haven't been loath to buffing specs multiple times. These are not the first buffs we've seen, and for some of these specs, it's not the first time they've been buffed, even recently. So, at least we're seeing the stuff on, a more or less weekly basis. Every other week, I feel like we're getting PvE buffs basically coming in. So, it is kind of. It is a bit more pronounced than in recent memory. I think a lot of it probably has to do with just all of these things converging with, 2 and 4 set bonuses coming back into the game for the first time in a long time, and double legendary working the way it does. So I don't know. For Boom Kids, maybe they know something we don't, and they're just waiting for people to discover it. I kind of doubt that, but it is pretty weird.
At this stage, I think everything that can be discovered has been discovered when it comes to stuff's been out for a couple of weeks.
Yeah, probably.
Beyond when stuff's finished, all of the top players who have played the spec are sort of settled into what they're doing. So yeah, I think we're at the point now where it's like you need to start looking at classes that are consistently in the bottom 1 or 2 specs for DPS, and looking at their alternate specs. So like Affliction Warlock having 2 specs, it basically Destruction and Affliction are very different position, right? Affliction's bottom, Destruction's towards the top. And you sort of have that factor of at least they have something, that class has something they can play that's a viable spec for playing, for doing some pretty high damage. I would like that spread to get back down to that 4 to 8% kind of spread between the top and bottom, but at least they have something they can do, right? And you look at Druids right now, and it's like, no, Feral's like mid-tier performance, Balance is bottom tier performance. Like it's not a DPS class at the moment. Like you bring them into raids because they bring some utility, but as far as innervates or battle reses go. But outside of that, there just isn't a huge motivation right now to bring a Druid to a raid, and I think that's unfortunate that we're looking at it that way. So I'd be keen on them doing some changes to at least the DPS specs to bring them more in line with where they need to be. And along that same line, Windwalker Monk, I'm very glad to see a damage buff for them. I think Windwalker has been in a bad spot for a while now, like multiple raid tiers, simply because they do bring the damage buff to the raid for melee when they apply that debuff, but Brewmaster Monk is just a very strong tank, so you bring a Brewmaster, you get that debuff anyways. You don't necessarily need to bring a Windwalker, and that's the only thing Windwalker brings outside of heavy-duty, crazy AoE inside very particular niche fights. Other than that, you're just going to end up bringing another melee DPS along who's better, has an immunity, has other things that are going to be better than Windwalker. So I'm glad to see them bringing the damage up to make them a little bit more competitive. Okay. Raid-wise, Jason, we finally got the normal and heroic tuning pass that you've been waiting for.
Yeah,
finally happened.
It might be a little bit overdue, but it's pretty big. I mean, it's not all-encompassing, and I'm sure it's not the last one that we're going to see, or at least I hope it's not, but it is a really good one. There's a lot of good changes in Sepulchre this week for LFR, normal, and heroic.
Yeah. They fixed an issue with Vigilant Garden. That'd be a cool boss. Guardian. They fixed an issue where dying with the unstable core would cause it to become non-interactive. In other words, if you're someone running that core in to activate the boss and you die on the way there, if no one else could pick up the core and that just caused a wipe, that'd be very sad. So glad they fixed that. In Lahuvium, they made Lahuvium's corpse no longer become stuck in the air if killed while casting Realignment. Realignment is an ability where Lahuvium rises up in the air, so teams are starting to get the damage to actually kill him while he's up in the air there, and I guess that was breaking things and making him hard to loot and etc. So glad they fixed that. This also, to me, brings up the argument of why some bosses have a chest that's on the ground versus looting a corpse. The chest at the end of the dungeons has always made a lot of sense to me. I'm fine if they start to move that direction more over looting a boss corpse, since issues like this tend to pop up every now and then. Acquisition of Atoma's detonation radius, basically the robot I talked about earlier that'd be cool to add to an arena that fixates on a player and rushes towards a player and then explodes. When it reaches the player and gets DPS down, it beats on the player till you kill it. When you kill it, it explodes. They reduce the radius on its explosion circle that appears to 20 yards from 40 yards. They cut it in half. These are all on normal and heroic difficulty, the next chunk of changes I'm going to go through. I'll specify the mythic ones if there are ones, but they're all primarily normal and heroic through all this. So that's another big change that makes that a much easier circle to get out of and avoid. And the cast time of detonation has been increased to 2.5 seconds, was 2 seconds on normal and heroic difficulties, so you get that extra 0.5 seconds to react to detonation before it happens. So another great round of changes. That knockback being something that a lot of normal and heroic teams have to deal with because they haven't necessarily nailed down a proper composition to CC all of these. Inside Mythic, you basically end up with like 5 of these ads CC'd by the end of the fight when you're killing the boss. That's not something necessarily that normal and heroic teams are expected to do, so this at least lets you DPS these ads down and then move out of the circle much easier for teams.
Yeah, I mean, I think this opens up different strats on these difficulties because, I don't know, we never kill these on heroic. We just trap or root one.
Oh, good. There you go.
And then just kill the boss before we have another one out, that we can't kill in the intermission. But now, like, maybe you don't strictly have to. I mean, it's a huge, huge nerf to the detonation radius.
Yeah.
I mean, it's literally half the size. 20 yards is big, but it's not that big. It's not like a third of the room. So you can actually do this mechanic properly if you have to or want to or whatever. Just for peace of mind, it might be easier to just decide to nuke the thing and not worry about the huge knockback. Plus, you have more time to get out of the circle. I think overall, Lehuvim is not a very complicated or punishing boss, but I mean, these certainly help, with one of the weirder parts of the fight, right? Like, I feel like the acquisitions automas were like design elements that didn't really work in the context of how you're actually doing the fight. So making it not just straight up 100% wrong to kill them instead of CCing them is probably better, just kind of going with the grain in terms of what players are already doing.
Yeah. Yeah, the changes, I think, overall to the heroic stuff that they're doing pass-wise is going to be really, really fun for a lot of people. So the next one's on Zymox. Zai Spellslinger health has been reduced by 20%, so those ads are easier to kill. The debilitating raid periodic damage reduced by 20%, so the raid team just takes less damage overall, which is great. So people can actually deal with Zymox easier. On Pantheon,
yeah, I mean, this isn't these little ads, like, they're actually like sneakily punishing. Because you're busy nuking down the big ads so you don't just get one shot, right? And so these things are sitting there, and if people aren't watching them, interrupting them, whatever, debilitating ray really starts ticking up, and they're alive longer than you want them to be. We've definitely had, even recently, like, people dying in those Zymox ad phases because they weren't really paying attention, and we weren't handling the spell slingers well. So yeah, this is a good. I mean, Zymox. The hardest parts of Zymox are not this, but still, I mean, this is a good change. It should be a lot smoother.
Yeah. On Pantheon, the Wild Storm has been removed from normal and Raid Finder difficulty. Huge.
Now, wait, I have a question about this.
Sure. Yeah.
Because I saw this in the blog, and I'm like, well, what does that mean? And I looked up the abilities in the Dungeon Journal for this boss, and there is nothing called Wild Storm. There's Anima Storm, and there's Wild Stampede. So which one has been removed from normal and Raid Finder difficulties?
My assumption is
maybe
the
they both did. Yes, I mean, Stampede seems more likely because I feel like it's more punishing. The combination of the two is really where the punishment comes in.
Yeah.
But either way, I mean, I don't like dealing with either of these abilities. So whichever one it is, if it is just one, and it's not like a portmanteau of the Wild Stampede and Anima Storm that they removed, then it's a win either way. It's just the question of which one is gone.
True. Sinful projections have been removed from heroic difficulty. This is crazy.
This is amazing.
I love it, man. It's going to make that fight a lot easier.
It's a great change for big groups because not everybody gets these in a huge group, but there's so much foot traffic that it could be really hard to avoid them all and to get them into good spots. So
so the decreased health on Necrotic Ritualists by 30% on normal and 15% on heroic. So these Ritualists are going to die substantially faster than they did previously. They decreased the health. They decreased the health on Withering Seeds by 30%. This is going to screw up a lot of healers, and 20% on heroic. So 30% on normal and Raid Finder, 20% on heroic, and 10% on mythic. It's one of the mythic changes they put in, but also resolved a bug that caused them to trigger Invigorating Bloom at 90% health instead of 100% health, as the spell description states. Resolved a scaling issue with the Withering Seeds to increase their health too steeply on larger raid size. Okay, so a couple things here. First and foremost, Seeds easier to heal. This is important because it means you can actually assign less healers to sort of pay attention to it. One healer or two healers might be able to handle the seeds entirely on their own, which is easier when there's fewer people sort of like throwing things into them to make sure you're capping them off. Because the whole goal with the seeds is once one is topped off, you get a buff. You want to keep that buff rolling from seed to seed to seed and never have it drop off your raid. And that way you actually have this huge healing increase throughout the entire phase of the fight that you need it. So that's a nice benefit. The downfall to that is everyone has to relearn how to heal seeds because it's going to happen much faster than it previously did. So it's going to be easier to top off multiple seeds really close together, which might mean you waste this buff to a certain degree if too many seeds are getting topped off really easily. The bloom triggering at 90% is weird. That's not one I actually witnessed myself. However, that's a problem. If it's not triggering 100% and people are timing it out, so they're trying to get them to 90 and then do that last percent quickly, and it just triggers at 90, that would be very sad. So I'm glad that happened. And then as Jason just mentioned, with larger raid sizes being a problem on this fight, they're making that even easier now with Withering Seeds health not increasing by a substantially crazy steep amount as your raid group gets larger, which makes it an easier job on your healers. Maybe you don't bring a ton of healers, but you're bringing 23 people. So you bring like 3 healers with 23 people, and they just cannot do, seeds. That could be a problem. So this would help out groups like that for sure.
Yeah, I mean, my biggest and ongoing complaint and headache with Sepulchre is how punishing it is to a group above like 25 players, even smaller than that, honestly. But I routinely run with, at least even on a light night, I'm running with 23 these days. I'm usually sitting at 28 or 30. And a lot of these fights just feel terrible with a full group. So I'm glad to see, I mean, some of these, I wouldn't really consider Pantheon to be one of the biggest offenders about that, but like obviously they had what they identified as an issue with the seeds and how their health scaled up. We have had issues where it's like, oh, if we could have just popped that last seed before the 40% transition on the, into the final phase, like we could have had the buff rolling into it, and like it just didn't quite go. In fact, it usually doesn't. So now it should. I feel like, and that's awesome. I don't know. I've sort of ended up in this spot where it's like I don't really love running with the huge group anymore, and I feel like the game is actively telling me to stop. So it's nice to see some of these changes that should make our lives a bit easier with 25 plus players, because I feel like, I know there's not a lot of groups that probably do that anymore, but for the ones that do, man, like the rooms don't get bigger. The denied area still denies you the same amount of area, and you got to fit more people into it or whatever. So yeah, I'm glad they're at least keeping an eye on some of this stuff.
Yeah. All right, I'm going to save Halandris changes to the end because I have a bit of a rant about Halandris. So I want to save that. We're going to go to Skull next.
Okay.
Where missile travel time for Devouring Blood has been increased to 2.5 seconds, was 2 seconds on heroic difficulty. So this lets people sort of get in position a little bit easier, take damage not quite as frequently, which means that they're able to sort of be topped off and healed up through this missile damage easier, which is good. They also did Desagne. The duration of the Disintegration Halo debuff was lowered from 6 seconds to 5 seconds on heroic, so this debuff drops a second sooner, which I think is a great change because that's almost one of the most frequent reasons for deaths is someone is a quarter of a second or half a second from the debuff going away, and they just can't get away from the circle anymore. They run out of space or positioning, whatever it is, and get tagged. So glad to see that happen. Rygalon, they increased the duration of the collapsing quasar field to 10 seconds on normal and heroic, and they decreased Rygalon's health by 5% on heroic difficulty. Is this something that's going to help you guys out, Jason?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, obviously the health nerf is great. I mean, we didn't have any sub 5% wipes, but we got pretty low, and 5% means you're getting an execute range faster and all that stuff. Like it's a healthy, chunk of HP going away.
Yeah.
The collapsing quasar field, I think changing this timing will help quite a bit because we're starting to get pretty good at the dance of like, okay, these two people got the first set of debuffs. They need to be the first people to clear, but it's hectic. And again, with a large group, like, there's confusion, and sometimes stuff gets taken accidentally or whatever. Having a little bit of extra time for people to assess what to do, listen for instructions, figure out, what they need to do to handle the mechanic. There's no downside there, I don't think. I mean, it seems really good. It wasn't like the thing that was killing us, but this is a thing you have to do right for the entire fight or you just die. So I think with a little bit more leeway there, it should help us out a lot.
Yeah.
So I'm looking forward to it. I mean, like I said, I hope this isn't the last round of changes for these difficulties, but I think this is going to be good for the teams that are pushing new bosses right now and, making re-clears less of a headache going forward. I mean, they've been really on point with nerfing this place and keeping the balance feeling good. So I just want to see it continue.
Yeah. All right. As far as Jailer goes, all the trapdoors will now close in phase 3 on normal difficulty, meaning that the floor is much safer in that last phase now for people, and dealing with that knockback that we talked about when we were talking about this fight will be easier for teams to deal with. They decrease the knockback of Decimator on normal and Raid Finder difficulties, meaning you don't get knocked back as far, so it's actually easier to position yourself between two holes and not get knocked into one of them, which is nice. And then they decrease the knockback of Misery on normal difficulty, and they decrease the rate of growth of Defile on normal difficulty. So overall, just making this boss more accessible for teams on normal, if that's something that they're trying to get through. I think by this point, if there's teams who've been wiping on normal or trying to get through normal this far into the patch, they need to start killing this boss on normal so they can start working on heroic difficulty stuff, because this shouldn't be something that is as much of a wall as it is for some teams. So I'm glad to see these changes come in.
Yeah, and especially, I mean, I feel like this raid too, you have such an extreme ramp going from the first few bosses up to Halandris and Anduin, and then the next two bosses are probably not as hard as Anduin, but they test different skills and they're challenging. And Jailer is not really that complicated for an end boss, but it's certainly no pushover. It's still an end boss. It doesn't... Yeah. I feel like Anduin really feels like the end boss of this raid in a lot of ways because it's so complex. There's so many elements to it. But, Jailer is the last boss, and it is a lot of people's target on whatever difficulty they're doing. You want to get Jailer killed. I don't know. I think some changes are probably in order. They're obviously not seeing the amount of normal Jailer kills that they would like from teams that are, regularly interacting with Jailer. So, why not? I think Jailer's a really cool fight, and if this encourages more people to do it or check it out, then that's a big win.
Yeah. All right, as far as Halandris goes, they fixed an issue causing damage from Lance and Light Shatter Beam to ignore some damage reduction effects. I'm sure tanks everywhere rejoice.
Yeah, I wonder which ones those could be. Like maybe shield block or armor or, absorbs maybe. Like Halandris hurts really bad, and hopefully not anymore. Like hopefully Halandris was hurting me really bad because of this quote-unquote issue that was ignoring my damage reduction effects. That's all I got. I'm a warrior. All I have is damage reduction effects. Please don't ignore them.
Just ignores your armor entirely. Oh, God.
It's ignoring ignoring my ignore pain.
Yeah.
I'm the one who's ignoring, not you, Halandris.
They fixed an issue causing volatile charges to break if the player carrying the volatile charge was disconnected. That's great. I'm glad that's a fix, although it used to be that when that happened, it was just a wipe no matter what. Now you actually have some time to reconnect, I guess. Light Shatter Beam damage decreased by 30% on Raid Finder, Normal, and Heroic, meaning, hey,
massive.
If you get hit by the beam, you can live through it. This
thing hurts, it used to hurt so bad. Tanks have to eat this, obviously, because you have to point it at it targets you, so you can't get out of it, but also you have to do something with it. And the way it was, like early on, if somebody missed a taunt or whatever, and sometimes if you're taunting the boss back and forth as frequently as you tend to do with one like Halandra, sometimes it just breaks and it just eats the taunt and it doesn't react to it. 2 Light Shatter Beams in a row, especially with its baseline damage tuning and the apparent issue with ignoring damage reduction effects, like 2 Light Shatter Beams in a row could easily just kill one of our tanks. So, just absolutely massive nerfs and bug fixes to Halandris, which is very welcome.
Yeah.
Even though the boss is on farm for us, like we have killed it repeatedly without too much of a problem the last few weeks, like you still look at it and go, okay, got to get ready for this one. This is going to be a wild ride.
They also nerfed Reclaim's periodic damage. It now actually builds more slowly during the Reclaim, which means people who are actually still seeing Reclaims will be able to be topped off and healed through it much easier. Things like Tranquility will get much more value because it's a lot of heal over times over a long period of time versus a quick snap heal is sort of what you needed earlier. So good to see that change coming in as well. All right, here's my Halandris gripe, okay? We saw massive Halandris nerfs last week on Mythic. After those nerfs, a huge amount of teams killed this boss. Like, massive amount of teams killed this boss. Because, in my opinion, they went way too heavy-handed on this on Mythic. And this is the unfortunate thing, and this is what can happen. The boss itself, in my opinion, Halandris, was one of the best bosses, like most fun bosses to do, one of the best bosses I've seen since Legion bosses. Like, it was a phenomenal fight on Heroic to actually do. It was a lot of fun to do. It took a lot of pulls, took way more pulls than it should have taken, and I think they could have designed some things earlier on that would have not made the boss as punishing as it was, as far as having as many one-shot mechanics. It could have a lot of, bad overlaps or damage mechanics that, if you happen to do X, then Y becomes more punishing, as opposed to if you happen to do X, the raid wipes, right? Like, I think that would have been a way to go about it. Now it is like the most boring boss to do. It's very sad. We didn't reclear last week. I watched a lot of other teams reclear, talked with a lot of people who were doing it, saw the changes for myself as far as watching streams and whatnot of people doing it. This fight is boring now by comparison. And what's sad about that to me is it was such an incredible boss. And the changes that came in to the bombs, I think, was heavy-handed. I think they could have increased the duration of the bomb timer and reduced the debuff time like they did, but not essentially making it so it was 30 seconds and you never really have to worry about ever letting your bomb redline or anything like that. You can do an entire intermission carrying a bomb if you wanted to with speed boosts and not have to worry about having to do handoffs multiple times throughout an intermission. Inside awkward positioning, you could literally carry it to the wall and then just do your handoffs at the wall. That being kind of a sad thing. The last phase used to have 3 separating, so you separate the raid into 3 different sections. It's now just 2. There's just a beam that goes straight through the boss that rotates. So it's substantially easier in that phase to make sure everyone's always hitting orbs constantly. Everyone is sort of topped off. Everyone's in range. Everyone's able to do damage. Like, all that huge nerfs to that phase. And it just kind of gutted the boss. And I think it's unfortunate because we're going to be in this raid. We're going to be seeing this raid until the next expansion comes out. Like, we've talked about, they're putting affixes in for this raid, which means that we're going to have this current version of Halandris mechanically for a long time. And it's going to be one of those bosses on Mythic that we sort of get to and go, all right, let's just, knock this one. It's basically like a first boss. Let's just knock this boss out, move on to the next boss, comparatively to what it used to be of, okay, we have to focus up and actually pay attention for this boss because it's going to be something that it is still sort of dangerous, right? I think nerfs are important. I think allowing teams to kill bosses are important. The best example of this is teams that had not seen this boss before were killing this boss in 40 to 60 pulls. Previously, teams who had not seen this boss before were killing this boss in over 200 and something pulls. That is the largest representation of how much they nerf this boss I have ever seen in this game. I've never seen a boss go from being hundreds of pulls to being less than 50 in one nerf pass. It was the biggest bat they could have possibly hit this with. So I'm disappointed because I wish more people could have experienced this fight in its glory, if you will, than what it's going to be farther on down the line. I think down the line, it just, there's so many mechanics that became non-mechanics anymore. Teams that are killing this now aren't even seeing reclaims. You're just pushing before reclaim and then pushing before reclaim and just seeing intermissions. It's too bad. So that's my Halandris rant that I wanted to fit in of when Blizzard does get it wrong, in my opinion, as far as hitting something too hard with the Nerf bat, you can make the content less enjoyable for players because it's just not stimulating content to do compared to what it used to be.
Yeah, and it makes me wonder if a boss like Halandris should be like the second to last boss, right?
Yeah.
I wonder if that's where it was originally slotted. I mean, we talked about this many times. My speculation that Sepulchre is really parts of 2 raids put together into one instance.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, that kind of was maybe the conception for what Halandris should be, but it just couldn't stay that way long term because realistically it's boss 7 of 11. So, Yeah, and kind of like how I was talking about how they usually just kind of dial buffs it up a little bit and see how it goes, and then maybe turn another knob and see how it goes. A lot of times they do it with nerfs too, but this seemed like just a massive rework, essentially, right? Like they just turned this boss into a different fight last week. And that's kind of what we said about it on air last week before you had a chance to do it. And it looks like it pretty much came true. So I think probably overall for the health of Sepulchre, it's probably for the best ultimately, but it is kind of sad to see it turn out that way. And maybe if we could glimpse into that parallel universe where Halandris is the next to last boss of a raid and that ramps up into like a big crazy fight at the end, like, maybe it stays that way forever or for much longer. But in a world where there's, 4 more bosses after that one, it's got to be killable at some point. So
fully agree.
I don't know.
I just wish they'd hit that.
It's like it's such a tough spot. It's like it can only be what it is in this context. It can't be anything else. It needs to serve the purposes of the game as we're currently playing it. It's just it's tough.
I just wish they'd found that 120 to 90 pull range kind of mark, as opposed to like going from a 250 pull boss to a 40 pull boss. Like they just gutted this entire thing with the biggest nerf bat they possibly could. It's very unfortunate. It's sort of, it'd be like if the jailer nerfs that came in this week basically made jailer easier than, Skolex. You'd be like, wait a minute, what just happened, right? Like, what did you do? That would be the comparable for me. So you're like, oh, okay, like this went from being a really interesting, dynamic, cool boss to being a boss that's going to be a bit of a snooze fest to kill every week. And that's unfortunate because I have in my brain what it was like to, originally, right? Like if I hadn't experienced it, I'd be like, all right, it's what it is, but I've experienced it. So I now cannot experience that. They've removed it from the game. It's not there anymore. Give me the affix inside 9.2.5 that brings this boss back to what it was for this particular thing. Pre-nerf, that's the affix for this boss. All right. Anyways, moving on. Tazavesh, the Veiled Market. They fixed some issues causing the bizarre strong arms to sometimes ignore a player carrying market goods. Well, that's no good. They're just slacking off, not doing their job. They get back in there and start paying attention to people here. Jeez. The Postmaster, they fixed an issue where the Postmaster was missing a boss frame. I mean, it's kind of important to signify its boss and be able to actually target it and everything. The Mythic Plus, the encrypted affix, they fixed a bug that would cause 2 sets of encrypted relics to spawn with Amarth, the Harvester, after the boss reset in Necrotic Wake. I remember that. I've seen that bug happen.
It was bugged weird. Up until today.
Yeah.
And it was terrible. Yeah. I ran into this most recently on Explosive Week 2 weeks ago, I think it was.
Right.
We're doing a pretty high Necrotic Wake with Explosive, and we had a wipe or something at Amarth, and then we got like 2 sets of encrypted relics, and it caused such confusion and such a mess with the explosives going off and all the ads that Amarth spawns in. It honestly cost us the timer. So I couldn't believe it was still bugged at that point. I'm really glad this is fixed because it was not super fun to deal with.
Yeah, not at all. So glad that they resolved that one, and then they also fixed a bug that could sometimes happen, preventing encrypted relics from spawning at all, with the dueling warlords before Zav Zav the Unfallen in Theater of Pain. If you just don't get relics, I'd be kind of frustrated too. So I didn't experience that one, but that one would suck too. As far as PvP goes, the Gladiator's Echoing Resolve now increases the duration of crowd control effects by 25%, was 20. I'm curious about this because it's a great trinket. I would have thought they'd go the other way with this. I would have thought it would have made them go up by 15 as opposed to by 20. But yeah, apparently they must be seeing in a lot of matches that this is a necessary change of this trinket. Basically what this trinket did is made you immune to the next 2 crowd controls that happened. After that happened, any crowd control used on you would have an extended duration. And so that was essentially what they're extending here, is they're making it even more extended. So a 6-second fear goes to a 7-second fear kind of thing is what we're seeing here now. So yeah, kind of a big deal. The Gladiator's Echoing Resolve now lasts 12 seconds, was 15. So again, they're making it a 12-second window where you're immune to a CC as opposed to a 15 seconds. So they're making that tighter, and it no longer increases the duration of root effects. I think that's a huge buff to it. It also no longer causes the target to become immune to root effects. So no matter what, you can still root somebody, but that root won't be increased in duration. So that means root beam for us balanced Druid folks is strong again against people wearing Echoing Resolve. So this is a big trinket rework for people who are doing PvP, where Echoing Resolve is essentially worse now. They nerfed it, is basically the way I look at that. So certainly something to check out if you're someone who does some PvP stuff.
Yeah, it seems like it's just more, in the realm of just keeping stuff more interactive, right?
Yeah.
So that's probably good. I mean, I don't PvP enough to have a real opinion on this, but it seems like that's kind of the direction that they're going with these changes.
Yeah. Okay. Last but not least, there was a big announcement today, and we want to be sure we actually cover it. Warcraft Arclight Rumble was announced as a new mobile game inside the Warcraft universe. It is not a tower defense, but a offensive tower game, where essentially you have your base and you assault bosses and other players, depending on whether you're doing PvE or PvP. It's going to have sort of adventures and quests for you to accomplish. It's going to have dungeons. It's going to have co-op. If that's something you want to do, it'll have PvP where you can go against other players. Basically, it's got a whole bunch of different play modes. And the concept is that you have multiple factions. You have the Undead, you have Beasts, you have Blackrock, you have Horde, and you have Alliance. Each of these different factions have champions that you can collect. They call them minis, is what they call them. And there's, examples. You have like Tyrion, and you have Maev, and you have Sneed, and Grommash Hellscream, and Rend Blackhand, and you have Thalnos, Blood Mage Thalnos, and Baron Rivenair as some of these minis that you can sort of choose and power them up. And you'll essentially have them as the generals for your armies that you're sending out onto the battlefield to not only like collect resources off the battlefield that help you send more troops, but to send more troops to attack the whatever it is your objective is, either the opposing player or the raid boss or dungeon boss that you're fighting. And yeah, it's basically like leveling up your army, collecting up these minis, unlocking more challenges, unlocking cosmetics. Overall, the art style I think is fantastic. That's where I want to start. The art for this, as with most Blizzard games, is amazing. It's sort of set as a same conceptualized thing as Hearthstone is, in the sense that it is a mini game that denizens of World of Warcraft can join in and play. So picture this as like an arcade game that people sort of gather around and play with each other inside of World of Warcraft, is what the concept for this game is. So all of the characters in it are like put together action figures, is the best way to describe them. These pieced together characters that fight each other. So when they defeat each other, there's not like gore and blood splattering on the screen. You're knocking apart toys. Toys are breaking and falling apart when you're actually fighting things. It's very family friendly in that way. And I think overall it's going to be a very attractive game. Some people have compared it to Clash of Clans as a similar sort of mobile experience. But the art is phenomenal for this. So I think it's worth checking out, at least when we actually get access to it. It's only up for pre-registration right now for Google Play. It will be eventually up for pre-order on the App Store for iTunes. I'll throw a pre-registration link in the show notes for people who want to click on it. I think these games really come down to, for me and my enjoyment of them, what the pay cycle is going to look like. If it's an app you have to pay for once, or whether it's something that you basically like cost a cup of coffee a week to sort of maintain your account. How that currency is earned, I think, is crucial to whether or not I enjoy and get stuck on a mobile game. But it's hopeful. It has some entertaining aspects to it for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think charming is the number one way I would describe like what they showed today. It really, I mean, you invoked Hearthstone, and I mean, I think conceptually it is in that same kind of space as Hearthstone. It's like a part of Azerothian culture is the way they're kind of pitching it, right? Like it's a game that they're playing inside the world, but it also like it does have that kind of lighthearted vibe. It does have that kind of whimsy that I think was the thing that I have always liked about Hearthstone, and I liked it when Hearthstone was initially announced as well. I got real like Disney Infinity kind of vibes from kind of the art style and the way the animated toys kind of look, which is not a bad thing. I think they did some really cool stuff with the Disney Infinity games in terms of taking all these really wildly disparate concepts and kind of finding a common visual language for them. Obviously, their task at hand is a little bit easier with Warcraft because you could do pretty much anything within Warcraft, but it all looks kind of Warcrafty if you just make the feet and hands and shoulders big enough, right?
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
I mean, this is pretty much what I was expecting. You know, we knew that they were going to announce a new game. There was, honestly, if you opened up the WoW mobile app, I don't know when the last time anybody opened up the WoW companion app is.
Oh, man. See, all right. If Mission Table was easier to do, I would open that thing way more often. Way more often if it was easy to do, but it's not.
Can't do it without an add-on, in my opinion. But actually, a friend of the show, Multizord, he posted a screenshot from the mobile app, and then I had to go check it out. And it's like the mobile app literally said, "You're invited to the unveiling of Blizzard's new built-from-the-ground-up strategy game for mobile next Tuesday." And it's funny because no mainstream press picked up on that anywhere. We were seeing, stuff going around. It was an AR style, like Pokemon Go type of thing or something, and all this other stuff. And it's like, Blizzard literally told us inside one of their own apps that it was a strategy game, and it's kind of fun. It's just funny that it didn't get picked up anywhere. But that just goes to show you how useful the WoW mobile companion has become over the years.
Man, I love the WoW mobile companion. It's a great tool. They killed it with mission tables. Like they just the mission table was amazing. It was amazing for Legion. It was amazing for Warlords. It was amazing for BFA. I used them all the time in all those 3 expansions. We hit this one. It got so complicated. We just literally couldn't take advantage of it. It made me very sad. Very sad overall.
Yeah. So there was, there's some info out there that this was a strategy game. I was hoping for something a little bit more tactics looking, maybe a little bit more on the serious side. Maybe I had dreams of like a turn-based like tactic style game redoing like Warcraft 1 or 2 or 1 and 2 or something, like just presenting that kind of story and characters and setting in a different way. But this looks very Clash of Clans-esque to me, which is not like a ringing endorsement from me. I was not like super into that game when I checked it out, but I will say what I did like about it was they were heavy on this presentation on the PvE aspect. That was the first thing they said. Like this is a robust PvE single player campaign. There's like 70 single player missions and all that stuff, and there's going to be, co-op and dungeons and raids and weekly challenges and all that stuff. So that sounds like it could be cool. I mean, it really exudes a lot of charm. It definitely looks like a Blizzard game in terms of art style. This is where Tom Chilton went.
Love the art.
When Tom Chilton left the WoW team in 2016, this is, I guess, where he went or where he ended up. So there are a lot of veterans.
Morty went here too, man. Morty's on this too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like there's a lot of veterans on the team. Like this is a legit Blizzard game. My concern is what is the business model going to look like? But it's certainly something that I will check out and want to get into and try it and see if I think it's fun. It has all the earmarks of something that could be fun. So yeah, you can. And also they said it's coming out in 2022. So
yeah, that too. Yeah, good call.
We're not going to be waiting that long to check it out. I would imagine that if it's coming out in 2022, there's probably going to be some kind of regional betas in various parts of the world somewhere very soon. You can pre-register for it on your phone's store right now. There's also like an opt-in thing on the official page for your BNet account. So you might want to check that out if you're interested. I mean, I'm somebody who I'm like a potential mobile game customer because I do have a lot of time where I can't really like just sit down at my PC and go into PC gaming world. But I like to play games on all different kinds of devices. I'll play a game on anything that can play a game. I don't care if it's a graphing calculator from when I was in high school, like whatever it is. If it will play game software, I will play it. So I'm interested. I just feel like for me, it hasn't really been tapped in sufficiently. There haven't been mobile games that have grabbed my attention. I have high hopes for Immortal. I'm pretty interested in this, and hopefully, like it really seems like an interesting and modern extension of the Warcraft RTS games. That's really what it seems like to me. It's like if you're going to port that kind of thing into mobile, like this is maybe the way that makes the most sense to do it in 2022. So I don't know. This wasn't like a shocking revelation to me. I feel very little like surprise at the reveal today. Not that it was like leaked or publicized or anything heavily in advance, but this is pretty much what I figured that they were working on at this point. And I'll check it out. I think the name is pretty rough. The name and the branding and stuff are a little off for me.
I'm with you, man. Yeah.
I don't know if that matters in 8 months if the game is awesome. It probably doesn't matter, but the initial impression is like, it's called what? Well, what does that mean? Why is it called that? That's what the icon looks like. Oh, okay.
Yeah, they have, you pointed out on their website, actually has a really great sort of like lightning bolt style icon, but they're not using that. They're using this particular character face, which looks very mobile game. Like it just screams like generic mobile game from that icon.
Yeah,
so
it looks like somebody ripping off Blizzard and trying to get you to download a game by mistake. Yeah.
You don't trust it immediately. So I think that's unfortunate. What I was kind of hoping this project would end up being, I mean, I'm okay checking this out. The one thing I sort of emphasized for Jason, we did a little YouTube video where we watched the reveal of this. So if you want to check that out, it's going to be on the YouTube channel, which is just youtube.com/starting zone. If you haven't checked that out, get over there, subscribe, helps us out. We did a little reveal on that. And one thing I was saying is Blizzard doesn't release anything unless they find it fun. Like it has to actually be enjoyable. People in-house enjoy it. It's a fun thing to play. So I have zero doubt that this is going to be a fun and enjoyable experience for players. It's just what the regular business model is going to look like. Because the devs who are playing it aren't the people who decide the business model. And so them having access to everything in the game for free might make this game feel really, really fun. And then when you start putting up business barriers, that's what can kind of kill a mobile game for me. So I need to know what this business model looks like before I can like ringing endorse this. And it's really my only fear about it is what this business model could end up looking like. Because it looks like fun. It's something I'm going to check out. I just hope it isn't a case where they design something really cool and fun, but it costs $7 a week to be able to maintain playing it and actually feeling like you're having fun, and that suddenly kills it for me, right? Like I hope that's not the situation. We'll find out.
Yeah, I really, my big hope is that you could just play this game as much as you want to, and if you're paying into it, you're paying for cosmetics or like premium items like that. You're not paying for game time like you're pumping quarters into an arcade machine.
Right.
That turns me off of mobile games all the time. When I have time to play a mobile game, or if it's time to play a mobile game, I want to play it on my schedule, not the game schedule, and I don't want to pay individually for the privilege. Like, I'd be happy to do a one-time purchase for a game like this and play it, but that's not really how the market has kind of borne itself out for mobile games, which is unfortunate because from what we saw today, I would gladly pay something commensurate with like a one-time mobile game purchase and play the game, but I doubt they're going to go that direction. I just hope that it's, and I think Blizzard has done pretty well with the free-to-play, pay for stuff if you want it model on PC. I think it's worked out okay for Heroes of the Storm. I think for Hearthstone, it's mostly okay, but, it's a CCG at the end of the day.
Hearthstone's going a bad direction with this. Rob and I were talking about this just recently. The store right now has a ton of cosmetics and fun items in it. Including like different board looks and different, kill, execute, sort of maneuvers for battlegrounds and stuff like that costs only money. You can't buy any of it with gold, and is like $30 for a board and $20 for a kill execution. And it's crazy where that went, which is why I'm nervous about this game.
Well, I mean, but I don't care about any of that, right? If it just changes the way the game looks, then I don't feel any compulsion to buy it. Even if I like it, it's like, I don't know. I don't get in on that level. So as long as I can play it and enjoy it, then I'm good with that. It's the energy bar, buy more gems to extend your energy bar thing that turns me off a mobile game. So I'm hoping they don't fall into that model here.
It's what I liked about Riot stuff, to be honest, as far as their gaming goes, of buying a currency, and that one currency is the only currency that's used in the game, is I would rather be able to earn that currency through playing the game and be able to purchase more of that currency if I want to with actual money, and that's the currency that applies to everything. It starts to waver and bother me when I go into something like Hearthstone. I'm like, that's a really cool character portrait. Oh, that character portrait costs $15 for literally the art of that character portrait. And you're like, could I buy this for, $15 worth of packs with gold? Because I can buy packs with gold. So could I just buy this thing with the equivalent? Because that's what they did. They did that once for one card. There was one card, it was a diamond card you could buy for 3,000 gold. Or you could buy for $30. And I was like, okay, well, I mean, sure, I'll spend 3,000 gold on this, which is way more than $30 worth of packs, but I'll do that because I have gold that I can spend. So I like it when that is the, hey, you have this resource you can earn through playing the game. Maybe it's through questing or accomplishing something. And that resource can also be used in place of money. I dislike when it's like, no, this is only money. That turns me off immediately from a business model. So I am worried because Hearthstone went that direction. And I imagine their teams have got to be in communication as far as the business side goes for how this mobile is going to launch and how Immortal's going to launch, with Diablo Immortal coming out shortly as well. I'm getting a little nervous about the Blizzard mobile game world as far as that goes, but we'll see.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Yeah, for me, I don't care about the cosmetic stuff, you know? I really don't. I very rarely ever buy anything or even want to. If I get it, you know, I'll pay for like a season pass for something or whatever, and the stuff is included. Awesome.
That's a much better way to do it. I'm down with that.
Yeah,
I'm kind
of buying it more for other benefits, right? There's usually some other benefits beyond just the purely cosmetic. So, you know, I don't mind paying some money for a service that I'm using, but I'm not going to just wail out and just, you know, buy everything in the store because it's there. Like, so yeah, I don't know. The other thing too is like, I'm sure we won't really hear anything concrete about the business model until this game is about to ship.
Yeah.
That would be my guess. I think we'll probably see them experiment with some weird stuff on beta. They'll probably have beta running for a while and in various different regions and see how people actually interact with the stuff. And then they'll probably dial in the business model.
Yeah. I just want to touch on the season pass thing because I love that system. That so many games have adapted to season pass, and it's a fantastic system of you want to play the game because you enjoy playing the game. Let's give you a way to earn additional rewards when you're playing the game, and if you want, you can enhance and get even more rewards for playing the game if you spend a marginal amount of money, the $15 or the $20. You get well worth the amount of cosmetics if you're going to actually finish that journey through actually paying that bit of money in. I think it's a fantastic model, and I think more companies should adapt it because it's phenomenal. It's great.
Yeah, I mean, you feel like you get something for your money, you know, in a way.
You're getting more out of your time too. Yeah. Right? Like,
yeah, it's like I'm you know, I'm paying. It's a little bit analogous to like, it's sort of like a one-time purchase of like a quarterly basis or something.
Exactly.
It's like, I don't know. I mean, if I'm spending the time, then I don't have a big problem spending some money. It's the, you know, spend money all the time thing that I don't want to do.
Yeah, that's what I drifted into. All right. Anyways, with that, guys, we want to play a quick sounder for our patrons, and we'll be right back. Hi, everyone. I'd like to take a moment to thank our patrons. They contribute a ton to our show and help us to improve on the content we create. Today, I'm giving a special shout out to Arajian, Celian, Infark, Kapawi, Mibble the Mighty, Nick, and Shorel. Thank you. This sounder is for you. Our Patreon is live over at patreon.com/thestartingzone. Big thank you and shout out to our newest patrons, Will and Nick E. Thank you so much for jumping in and supporting the show. It's awesome that you wanted to support us in that way. It helps pay for all of the hosting bills and improving the show and getting graphics and doing the patron episodes and all that fun stuff. We do actually have a patron call-in happening shortly, a patron Q&A episode happening shortly. It's going to be Friday. That's this coming Friday, so we're coming up on it quick. That's May 6th. So be sure that you are reaching out to us either through our Discord, which you can find at thestartingzone.com/Discord, or through Patreon with your questions if you have one, or actually hopping in Friday night. It'll probably be around 8:30. We'll confirm inside the Discord channel, and we'll post it on Twitter as well, the timing for it. And you can actually come live on the show and ask us your questions and chat with us if that's something you want to do on Friday night. So be sure you get in your questions otherwise, and we will be answering all those patron questions about whatever it is you want to talk about. You can talk about Warcraft Arclight Rumble. That doesn't bother us at all. We're happy to see what you think about that. Or the Dragonflight announcements, the other big thing that's out there, I guess. So let us know.
Yeah, it's our first patron show since the Dragonflight announcement. So I'm sure people will have all kinds of stuff on their minds about that. And yeah, if you want to talk about Warcraft Arclight Rumble, you have to say it 3 times fast and then ask your question on the air. It's a bit of a tongue twister, but yes, welcome new patrons, and thank you everyone for your support of the show over the years. It really does mean a lot. It helps us keep the show at the level that you expect. And we didn't do a patron show in April because we did the stream along with the Dragonflight announcement instead. So we're doing one in early May so that we can kind of, it's sort of a little bit of both, right? We just wanted to get it like as close to the heels of the Dragonflight announcement as we could. So, any thoughts, questions, wish list stuff you have for that, let us know. And any other, typical patron episode questions you have, get them submitted, and we'll get details posted in the Discord and via the Patreon page in a little bit here.
Yeah. And all right, folks, with that, we're going to wrap up episode 517 of The Starting Zone. If you want to check out show notes for this episode or leave a comment on the show, you can head on over to thestartingzone.com, the official website for the Starting Zone podcast. If you've enjoyed this episode of The Starting Zone, consider heading on over to your iTunes or your Apple podcast, leaving us that 5-star review. They really help out our show. And frankly, we love hearing reviews written by our listeners and reading them here. And we don't have one this week, so get in there and you'll read it next week, which will be great. So more reviews always help us out. For those who are curious, we are one of the top 20 video game podcasts in the United States. We are also in the tops for a lot of other countries, but it's pretty cool to sort of be holding that position pretty consistently. A lot of people have really helped our show grow, and we really appreciate all those people who support us either with reviews or through Patreon or just through contacting us and letting us know what's going on in their lives. A lot of the write-ins, which we love to share on the show, we'll get back into doing as well, because those are great. And if you want to contact the show and leave us your feedback or ask a question, you can email us at thestartingzone@gmail.com or reach out to us on Twitter. Or like I said earlier, join our Discord over at thestartingzone.com/Discord. And I'll pump once again our YouTube channel, youtube.com/thestartingzone. Head on over there if you want to watch these episodes basically unedited. You can do that over on YouTube with all of the pauses and ums and ahs that may happen during the live show that I sort of trim out and make cleaned up for the podcast content. And if you just want to see what we look like, it's over there as well. So check that out. We have been putting out some things like the Dragonflight reveal watch that came out as a YouTube video. Today's video about the Warcraft Arclight, that came out as a YouTube video. So if you're trying to find some more Starting Zone content you don't necessarily find on your podcast feed, you can head over to youtube.com/thestartingzone. And Jason, where can folks find you on the internet?
Best place to find me is always over on Twitter. You can find me over there at Shieldwald, always talking whatever I'm doing around WoW and other stuff. And you find me streaming Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Sunday nights, 7:30 Eastern, doing raids and keystones and stuff over on twitch.tv/Shieldwald. So it's been fun getting back in the streaming thing lately. Appreciate everybody stopping by and saying hey and supporting the stream. So we'll be back after it this week. A full schedule this week. I will be streaming all 3 nights. So come say hi.
Awesome. Yeah, I streamed all of my prog last week as well. So I've been doing that. It actually came in kind of handy because I've been able to go back and rewatch the VODs or grab clips of certain things that have happened during the encounter to sort of help us learn more of the Anduin stuff or what's happening with it. There is aspects of that fight where people, the raid team is split, so half the raid can't see what's happening in the other phase, and be able to create clips to sort of tell the story of what's happening in one phase of the other to the other half is actually pretty useful. So I'll probably be streaming my raid stuff again this week over at twitch.tv/SpencerHD. And you can find me on Twitter at Spencer_Downey if you're trying to reach out to me there. And otherwise, for Jason and myself, we want to say thanks for listening and jobs done.